Again, with respect, I think that this question reveals something significant about the way that most Americans have been conditioned to think about Iranian politics. We've been conditioned to think about the Islamic Republic as this totalitarian, everyone in lockstep sort of system. And so when we observe the kinds of contestation over policy, over relative position in the system that any place else in the world we call normal politics, when we see that kind of contestation in the Islamic Republic, we think, and any number of so-called Iran experts here in the West will tell us, that this is abnormal and pathological and that the system must be getting ready to come apart at the seams. This is just nonsense, really. Yes, there are tensions, there have been differences between President Ahmadinejad and Ayatollah Khamenei. And Western reporters and Iran experts here in the West have given those differences overblown, at times even hysterical treatment, saying that they're unprecedented signs of a regime, insecure regime that's fracturing at the top. This reveals at the very least some woeful ignorance about basic political history in the Islamic Republic. Tensions between Imam Khomeini, the Islamic Republic's founding father, and the Islamic Republic's first elected president, Abul Hassan Bani Sadr, reached a point that in 1981, in the middle of a war, Bani Sadr was impeached. After the reformist Mohammad Khatami became president in 1997, tensions between Khatami and Ayatollah Khamenei were at least as pronounced, at least as contentious, at least as fraught as anything that we've seen between Ahmadinejad and Ayatollah Khamenei. This kind of tension between these competing power centers is actually pretty typical of politics in the Islamic Republic. It's not just possible, it's actually kind of baked into this system of checks and balances where competing power centers are juxtaposed against one another. It's not something pathological, it is normal politics in the Islamic Republic.
It's something, I would second Flynn's notion on this. The question starts from this assumption that the Islamic Republic is a dictatorship. It's a dictatorship that in some versions is micromanaged by Ayatollah Khamenei. In other versions or at other times it's micromanaged by President Ahmadinejad. But there must be someone pulling the strings for this dictatorship that's been imposed on the hapless Iranian population. This is something that ignores basic polling in Iran by Iranians, by Western expatriates about Iran, defies all of these polls that show significant, not complete, but significant support for President Ahmadinejad and very significant support for Ayatollah Khamenei and significant support overall for the system of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The most recent rendition of this happened last year when Iran went through another cycle of elections for its parliament, the parliamentary elections in 2012. There was this terrible piece put forward by the New York Times that somehow Ayatollah Khamenei's son, who's not a political figure, was going to rig the parliamentary elections to unseat the sitting Speaker of Parliament to impose some lackey, and then Khamenei was going to abolish the presidency altogether. I had a colleague at the American University who I deeply respect, another professor there, who was looking at this article and had heard various commentaries here by the so-called Iran experts in Washington, all giving supposed facts to this. And he said, why do you think this isn't going to happen? I said, well, it's not going to happen. There's no basis to it. It's really fact-free analysis. The people who are putting this forward didn't even look at the Constitution as a basic starting point. If Ayatollah Khamenei even wanted to abolish the presidency, and there may be sound reasons to do so, to become a parliamentary system. Iran had a prime minister in the 1980s. There may be reason to go back to that. But to do so, Ayatollah Khamenei, the system, would have to put this kind of change for the Constitution to a popular referendum. It is not something the so-called dictatorship could just impose on the hapless population. Just not possible. The other thing is, of course, none of this happened. The 2012 elections for parliament went off. They were very much contested. The actual the existing Speaker of the Parliament, who Khamenei supposedly wanted to unseat, was reelected. Nothing that people, the so-called Iran experts say would come to pass, came to pass. But as is usual with the discourse about Iranian politics and the misrepresentation of Iranian politics here that drives the demonization and pushes us closer and closer to the brink of war with this country, all of that, all of those people, no accountability. No accountability. When the journalists involved could have done some basic fact-checking. They could have taken one look at the Constitution. They could have talked to one person inside the Islamic Republic who actually cares about and is invested in that system, or they could have taken a look at any of the other pieces of commentary and analysis that are written by people who don't have an anti-Islamist agenda.